Most lives collapse not from lack of talent, but from lack of will. A stone lies where it falls, silent, passive, lifeless. The human being is different. Iqbal reminds us, you were not created to drift, you were created to choose. In Iqbal's philosophy, the self is not a thing, it is will in motion. We do not have will, we are will. Every conscious decision is a creative act that shapes destiny. Today, we continue our 50-part journey through Asrar-e Khudi, the masterpiece where Allama Iqbal reveals the inner secrets of the self. This is episode 07. Take a deep breath, settle your mind, and let the wisdom unfold. The self, says Iqbal, is not a static being. It is a current of will. To exist is to will. To affirm, to strive, to move. Without will, the self collapses into passivity. And passivity is death. Iqbal begins this reflection with a question that defines his philosophy. What is the difference between a stone and a human being? The stone simply is. It lies where it was thrown, obeying gravity, unmoved by choice. The human being, however, can stand against gravity. They can choose direction, define purpose, resist even instinct. This choice, this power to say yes or no, is the heartbeat of Khudi. Iqbal writes, "The self is will, not substance. It is not a thing we possess. It is the act of possession itself. We do not have a will. We are will. And this, he says, is the divine signature within us. God creates freely. And so does the self, in its own limited but real measure. Every genuine act of will is an echo of divine creativity. To choose, therefore, is to participate in the very movement of creation. And the one who refuses to choose, who lets others decide for him, who lives by borrowed opinions, is not truly alive. For Iqbal, the tragedy of humanity is not sin, nor ignorance. It is inertia. The soul that has ceased to will has ceased to be. He writes, "Weakness of will is the real death of the self. The first act of awakening, then, is to reclaim the power of decision. To remember that you are a doer, not merely an observer." But Iqbal distinguishes between desire and will. Desire is blind. Will is focused. Desire reacts to the world. Will shapes it. The self begins with desire, an unformed energy that seeks expression. But through discipline and love, that desire crystallizes into intention. And once intention becomes clear, it draws the universe to its aid. Iqbal's message is not passive mysticism. He calls for motion, for creation, for action grounded in purpose. He says that the highest prayer is to act rightly. Reason may calculate, but only will creates. Will takes what is potential and makes it actual. It bridges the unseen and the seen, the ideal and the real. To will is to affirm life. To say, I am here for a reason. Every soul, Iqbal teaches, has a unique rhythm, a destiny waiting to be formed. But destiny is not imposed from outside. It is the pattern of your own choices, woven by your will. Thus, he rejects fatalism. He sees it as the greatest poison to Khudi. To say it was meant to be without striving is to deny your creative essence. For Iqbal, true belief in God means belief in one's own moral agency, that you are entrusted with a share of divine power and must use it consciously. Will, then, is not arrogance. It is responsibility. It is the self-sacred duty to continue creation in its own measure. To will is to respond to the call of being. It is to say, I accept my role in existence. Iqbal reminds us that the entire universe is a theater of divine will. Stars move, trees grow, rivers flow, each following its own law. But the human being is different. We are called not to obey blindly, but to choose in awareness. This awareness gives our actions moral weight. It turns motion into meaning, and choice into destiny. Every act of will strengthens the self. Every surrender to inertia weakens it. The will, therefore, must be exercised. Like a muscle of the soul. The more it acts with purpose, the more it becomes real. In this first stage, Iqbal asks us not to theorize about will, but to feel it. To recognize that every moment we delay, every time we choose comfort over purpose, a part of us fades. But when we rise, even once, against the pressure of habit, the self begins to awaken. That single act of choice is the seed of destiny. The will is not meant to sit silently inside us. It exists to create. When it moves with clarity, it transforms thought into form. Iqbal says, the self attains reality through action. To act is not simply to move. It is to project the inner world outward. To make invisible conviction visible. Every true act leaves a trace in time. A vibration that reshapes both the door and the world. 1. From intention to creation. Between wish and deed lies the field of discipline. Desire pushes outward, but will channels the push. Without this focus, energy scatters. With it, energy condenses into form. Iqbal compares this to the artist's task. A painter does not reproduce what already exists. He draws out what the eye of imagination has seen. Likewise, the human being is an artist of destiny. The brush is will. The canvas is time. When intention is pure, when it arises from love rather than vanity, reality itself begins to cooperate. Iqbal calls this the law of resonance between the self and the cosmos. The world responds to those who act within a necessity. The whole universe conspires with the man of strong will. This is not magic, it is participation. Reality bends toward purpose because purpose reveals the divine order within things. Every act of will carries moral gravity. To will rightly is to align oneself with truth. To will wrongly is to disfigure the self. Thus, power must always be guided by love. Without love, will becomes domination. With love, it becomes creation. Iqbal rejects both weakness and tyranny. The weak deny their freedom. The tyrant abuses it. Both destroy the harmony of Khudi. True will respects the freedom of others, because it arises from spiritual confidence, not fear. It strengthens rather than suppresses life around it. He writes, "The highest power is service. To serve is not to bow. It is to use one's strength for the growth of the whole." For Iqbal, worship is not confined to ritual. Every sincere deed is a form of prayer. When intention, will, and love unite, the act itself becomes sacred. This transforms daily life. Work, study, art, struggle. Each can be a manifestation of devotion. He warns, however, against empty movement. Busyness without direction is just another kind of sleep. The measure of an act is not its size but its authenticity. The smallest action, if willed with purity, has cosmic significance. To live by will requires courage. The world resists the one who decides. It is easier to drift than to direct, to complain than to create. But Iqbal insists that the creative soul must risk failure. Without risk, will stagnates. Without struggle, it cannot grow. He writes, "Action is trial, trial is the path of faith. Through trial, the self discovers its strength. Through defeat, it refines its aim. Each failure, faced consciously, deepens freedom. Courage, then, is not absence of fear, it is mastery of it. Fear is the shadow cast by unrealized potential. When you act, the shadow dissolves. Every deed echoes. What we call destiny is simply the accumulation of these echoes. Each decision alters the structure of the self and the pattern of reality around it. Iqbal therefore replaces fatalism with responsibility. The future is not fixed. It is fluid, awaiting direction. The self writes its fate with the ink of its will. And when that will is united with divine purpose, its words become eternal. To act creatively, then, is the highest form of remembrance. For in acting, we mirror the Creator. At the summit of selfhood, the human will no longer compete with the divine. It harmonizes with it. In the early stages, man's will struggles against limits, against nature, society, even fate. But as the self matures, it realizes that true freedom is not rebellion. It is participation in divine creativity. Iqbal writes, "When the self is fortified by love, God Himself becomes its instrument of expression. This is not arrogance but alignment. The perfected self wills what God wills, not by surrender of individuality, but by its fulfillment. In knowing itself, it knows its source. In creating, it serves the Creator's own longing to be known. This is the secret of spiritual maturity. The self that once said I am, now says I am through him. Freedom, in Iqbal's view, is not a gift given at birth. It is an achievement. It unfolds through struggle, reflection, and moral discipline. At first, the will is bound by instinct. Later, it learns to choose between right and wrong. Finally, it discovers that to will the good is to will the real, to act in harmony with the deep structure of existence. Thus, freedom and obedience are not opposites. When the self obeys the law of its own divine origin, it becomes truly free. He writes, "To obey the divine law is to participate in the divine act of creation." This insight transforms the very meaning of destiny. Destiny is not a cage. It is a collaboration. Man and God co-author the unfolding of time. In Iqbal's universe, there is no final rest. Existence is an ocean of becoming, and will is its current. The self never stops evolving. Even in eternity, it grows. Paradise is not idleness. It is perfect creativity. The endless realization of new possibilities within divine nearness. Thus, the human will, once awakened, is never extinguished. It carries the mark of the infinite. Its motion is prayer, its persistence worship. The faithful self, Iqbal says, is deathless, for it lives in action. This immortality is not escape from the world. It is complete immersion in its meaning. To will eternally is to love eternally. Yet even at this height, vigilance is needed. The greater the will, the subtler the temptation. Ego can disguise itself as devotion. Ambition can wear the mask of service. That is why Iqbal ties will to continuous self-examination. The true seeker must polish the mirror daily. Each act, each motive, must be weighed in the light of love. Only love protects will from corruption. Without love, power decays. With love, it radiates. Thus, every stage of selfhood circles back to love. Not sentimental affection, but the creative energy of divine passion. Love fuels will gives love form. Together, they generate the universe. At last, the journey of Khudi reveals its meaning. The self is not a drop lost in the sea. It is a flame kindled by the eternal fire. The weak self flickers and dies. The strong self joins the flame that never ends. Iqbal's message is not of withdrawal but of engagement. To will, to act, to love, until one's being becomes a bridge between time and eternity. He concludes, "He who knows himself knows that his destiny is to create. The true servant of God does not escape life. He intensifies it. He transforms every moment into a spark of creation. In that endless act, the human self and the divine purpose meet. Two flames that burn as one."